Tawooth. What did they know about origins? Like unenlightened people in poverty and chaos throughout history, the color of the skin became the affinity group identifier. In giant multicultural slums, immigrants without extended kinship nets supported those of the same epidermal DNA character, sorting themselves out into clumps of colors. Many people of differing derm colors share more group DNA similarities than with people of the same white, brown, black, or yellow skin. 99% plus of human genes are common to everyone in the natural state, yet that isn't necessarily a factor to human groups struggling for economic power. It was important to be a member of an upwardly mobile group of people. In the chaos, the Afghan myth various took a new form in the American West. From the backbone Rocky Mountains across the Great Basin to Sierras and Cascades, from the Okanagan Valley of Washington to the Upper Sonora Desert of Arizona, and Hayden Lake, Idaho, it provided the historically challenged with a class identity amidst protracted chaos. In the Helix, chaos in which authority and disestablishmentarianism attacked individuality and congruity prevailed, while anarchistic and fascist factions formed hoods of convenience. Some based structure partly on the concept of an Aryan nation, La Raza, and the Greenland liberation uncledom. What was the concise route of human cultural dispersion from the land of Eden, perhaps in the green belt across North Africa to Iraq during the Wisconsin Ice Age? The 27 names of Mount McKinley, Tenedos, Tanana, the Isle of Tenedos, and Aegean, not far from Saul's city of Tarsus, the Aral Sea, Sir Daria gave some hints. Arrian, the historian of Alexander, Arrian, the schismatic, believing Jesus' nature was entirely human. The names of history in the era of writing left some trace of the wanderings of the ancient peoples in Central Asia before Ukrainian languages dominated Europe. Yet of an accurate and concise trail, there can be no certainty. Are the Ainu a lost proto-Caucasoid tribe like the Maoris or Australian Aborigines? Did St. Brennan sail to America in the 3rd century A.D.? Were the American Indians, so named mistakenly by Columbus, actually a polyethnic group of people accreting people of typo blood over thousands of years from land and sea crossings east and west? The Clovis culture of North America, circa 11,500 BC, was not the first to reach the new continent. The Navajo, Yakima, and Mohawk Indians shared genetic traits with the Druze. Prior cultures with skeletal remains of very diverse ethnic origins dating to 15,000 BC and toward the east coast instead of the logical west, if the first Americans arrived from Asia across the Bering Sea land bridge, were discovered. Predatory Vikings in the sailing evolution followed Alps from Europe, using large-skinned boats over centuries across distant western reaches of the Atlantic Ocean to Iceland, Greenland, and eventually Newfoundland. Did Cretans build Neolithic earth domes across Europe and England and become the first Irish builders of Stonehenge in England sometime during the last half of the 3rd millennium BC? Did the culture of Sumer Akkad provide by a coarse courier smelting and writing technology to China? What mystery of the wanderings of human beings caused the disappearance of Neanderthals some 30,000 years before present? The localization of skin color originating generally in response to climatic conditions, and who the actual ancestors of those people in time, geographies, location were may never be clear. It is known that when civilization began 6,000 or 7,000 years ago, something fundamentally changed in the spirit of mankind. Adam and Eve may have lived in that paradise during the last ice age that existed in today's Sahara, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. When the last ice age ended with global warming, they were expelled from Eden and followed the Euphrates down to the Persian Gulf, perhaps finding a defensible peninsula upon which to found a civilization, the first of human history from 10 to 20,000 years before Christ. If Adam and Eve are the earliest human historical explanation that remained from oral traditions into the era of writing, Noah and the flood story recount the history of the destruction of that civilization with the global warming of which they were warned by God, though through Noah, that melted glaciers, polar ice, and made the Persian Gulf sea level rise 200 feet. Noah built a boat to take his family and representative animals of that culture aboard to ride out the storm surge and increase of sea level. Cain and Abel, the sons of Adam and Eve, are believed by some to represent the rift between farming and herding cultures, with Cain being the blacksmith farmer who killed Abel. Cain was cast out into the world to share the technological changes with other peoples around the Mediterranean and Asia Minor. Discovering the differences between good and evil, losing the innocence of nakedness, noticing the evolutionary deselecting of the legs of snakes, it is improbable that human understanding will be more than through a glass darkly, especially as humanity is artificially broadening its genetic base. Natural selection is a response to evolutionary challenges that nobody would ever entirely present to himself. As the environment was surpassed by human tech personnel, artificial selection became the mode of existence. That artificial selection was doomed. The nation of Tawooth faced too many challenges to be so narrow-minded as a purely skin and eye color defined Aryan nation. Residual nuclear, chemical, and biological vectors with organizational chaos made a road-based faction practical. An odd band, homeless warriors, of any race who created the common trait of surviving big calm assaults, wandering the ways of Lewis and Clark, Jim Bridger, Jedediah Smith, Geronimo, Captain Jack, Gila River Apaches, Eldridge Cleaver, and Ken Jasey over the Eisenhower Interstate Network formed the Corps of Independent Allies for the Conquest of Mars. They were thought of by other tribes of the Rio Amerigo as a bland insurrection logic of secular and humanist, mired forever in the infinite loop of each human current. The leader and plenipotentate of the nation was Frizzy Bar Warp, son of Gustav Hanahar Warp, discoverer of the conservative, a missing psychological dialectical match to the libido noted by Sigmund Freud. That vital balance for individuals, Gustav Warp discovered, was that all psychological laws have a matching anti-law like quantum mechanical particles. Gustav Warp contributed important theoretical work in egoing, no-going, superleaded, and VDT. Brethren, under the benevolent guidance of Big Warp, rebuilt and rechristened Shuxo-Chauvin Bridge across the Golden Gate of Warp Cisco Bay as a St. Louis Arch with a pilot deck of condos over the top named the Hammerhead Skyboxes. At each end of the bridge was an RV campground for Prizzy's Praetorian Guard, the Jaws of Death. Gel boot camps at the foot of each shining RV camp on a hill clustered thousands of potential miners scraped from the Great Basin, Rocky Backbone, and Arizona, the Sonora Desert. They would be recast into warriors of the Tawoothian Brethren in the New World Order for Disorders, miners of corporate interplanetary projects around the Copernic System's areas of mass mineral concentration.